Welcome to another episode of the Distributed Data Show, brought to you by DataStax Academy, where we bring you the latest news and interview technical experts to help you succeed at building large-scale distributed systems. Welcome everyone to the Distributed Data Show. Today we're going to wrap up 2017. In the studio today with me, Jeff Carpenter.
Hello.
And remotely we have David Gilardi.
Hello.
With the ugliest sweater I've ever seen.
What is going on with that? Can you please justify yourself?
Oh, snap. Oh, that's so good. Okay.
I feel a little underdressed.
Yeah, for those of you on the podcast, be thankful. But it's really, it's this green sweater with two gingerbread men on it. It says,
don't
snap.
explain it. If you have to explain it, don't do that.
Yeah, I think that's the problem is if I look at it, I'm like, this is a violent sweater, which I'm actually kind of cool with, and I hate that about myself.
Okay, so about 2017.
Yeah, about 2017. Then. We'll just leave that shirt in 2017. So we're going to do a wrap up on 2017 topics, trends, and just like any other year in IT, it's been full of changes. I mean, come on, the tech industry is all about deltas, right? How much delta we get every year. So why don't you kick us off, Jeff? Tell us all about what you think was a big trend this year.
Okay, big trends of the year. Got to do my hot takes. I've been saving them up. So
he gets a little feisty.
This was the year of containers kind of making that jump to everyone is jumping on the container bandwagon now. Like, I feel like 2015, 2016, everyone was kind of playing around with it, dabbling. This year it became more and more real. So not just, people running Docker on their desktops and playing around, but actual production systems using container technology, but also orchestration. So, guys, I think Kubernetes may have won.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, now Mesos supports Kubernetes. Kubernetes in every single cloud, EKS, and first class citizen in Azure.
Yeah.
Google. Totally Kubernetes. Yeah.
So I might be the technology laggard here. I still have a little bit of hesitation about going all in on allowing an orchestration framework to auto scale my cluster. Specifically, if we're talking about Apache Cassandra or DataStax Enterprise, managing my data tier, I'm okay. I've always been okay with auto scaling of the service tier because, we're designing stateless microservices.
No state.
Yeah, and allowing them to be scaled automatically. But I've always had that little bit of hesitation about scaling the data tier automatically. So verdict is still out. Maybe 2018 will give us some more clarity on that one. What do you think?
You want my take on 2017 here?
I like how you artfully avoided commentary on auto scaling the data tier.
I will give you.
Well played, sir.
You like that? I just moved right on.
So on the topic, man, I will tell you, do never ever auto scale your data tier, and I can't think of a good reason to, because that's just too heavy of a thing to let just arbitrarily happen. And as you'll see pretty soon, some cloud providers do that for you, and it's not okay. And it doesn't fit in that world very well. I think you're right. Application tier, auto scale all the way with buckets. You put boundaries around it. But if you do that on your data tier, it's just a lot. It's too much to try to just let happen auto magic at this point, at least in 2018, 2017.
Right.
Yeah, I knew Patrick was going to have an opinion on that one.
And I did.
Nice. Okay, well, do you have some opinions to share with us, David? What was big this year?
Oh, well, there are multiple items, but I think the one that is most in my mind these days would be graph databases, but not just graph databases, because graph databases have been around for some time, but in particular distributed graph databases, and they've just picked up a ton of steam. Especially in the cases of recommendation engines and fraud detection and that kind of deal. They're taking off, right? And it's becoming more and more interesting. I've been seeing a lot of talks on various pieces of some of these new graph capabilities at a lot of the conferences and everything like that. So it's that's definitely one that's on mind for me.
So why was this the year? Because like you said, they've been around for a while. People have been using graph databases forever. Well, not forever, but for a long time. Like, why 2017?
Well, let's see. To me, I think part of it is the distributed nature, right? I think now we've had some technologies that have emerged that have now essentially given us the capability to take a graph database off of like a single instance and, distribute that amongst multiple instances and just essentially upping the capability, right? How much we can process and that kind of deal. So I think from that alone, it's actually enabled us to be able to answer some more difficult questions. And there's another part of it too. I think some of the technology vendors out there have now made this stuff available, very easily available, right, for developers and everybody to just get into. So I think it's kind of a combination of these things, and now the fact that some of the capabilities, some of the things you can do with graph databases are just far superior than the same way that you can try to accomplish things with relational databases.
Well, I think part of it is also Gremlin is now the winning way to work with
the
graph
lingua
database.
franca.
I wasn't gonna use that,
yes.
but all right, yeah, lingua franca. It makes me sound so cosmopolitan, but that is the language we work with graph because it works in a distributed nature really well.
Yeah.
If you look at all the graph implementations that have been released in the past year from the cloud vendors, everyone's saying, "Oh, we support Gremlin," and that just nails it right there. This is okay. We've started to land on something. It's like SQL. Once every database vendor in the world started using SQL, and that became the standard, then it just relational databases blew out because we didn't have to relearn everything every time we touched a database.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so that's a real enabler. That's Patrick's why it blew up in 2017. That makes sense. Okay, I feel like we teased a little bit some thoughts coming from you, Patrick. So why don't you just go ahead and lay it on us? What do you got?
What's my take on the trend in 2017? This year has definitely been a hallmark for the cloud, all the cloud providers settling into their database story and how they say we should use their database story. It's like, hey, developers, you want a database? You come to us. You don't go anywhere else. It's getting into this kind of mafioso thing. You don't need another database. Just come to us. But every large cloud vendor, Google, Azure, Amazon, they all have what they think is the end all be all for database, and you need nothing else. The problem as I see it is that there are always going to be trade-offs with those, and so I talked to you and I were just at reInvent,
right,
and talking to folks. They're like, I don't like the trade-offs. Or one of the things that I think is also becoming a really big trend is the multi-cloud story.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, we talked to a lot of folks that were like, yeah, we're kind of hedging our bet. We're a little bit in Azure, a little bit in Amazon or Google, and it's just these mix and matching. It's really I think going to be that's going to be next year's trend for sure when you do the trends, but it's already starting to happen now. So when you do that, okay, so when you say I'm going to be multi-cloud, that keeps you from being locked into a single database in that cloud. So for instance, you cannot run DynamoDB in Azure. I didn't know if you knew that.
Right. I haven't tried.
Yeah, you can't do that. That doesn't exist. And Cosmos DB never will run in Google. I don't care how much Kubernetes you throw at it.
Okay, right. Okay, so that's the question then is are people also using a little bit of I don't even know how that would work. Are they using data stores when they're doing multi-cloud? Are they using the data solutions that are being offered by those different cloud vendors, or are they just using something else? Like, I don't know.
Well, it's easy to get lured into that.
Yeah.
And that's the trend is like, oh, it's easy just to click a button and I have a database, right? And then you drop into it without even thinking, and then before you know it, you just racked up a huge high interest debt credit card. The tech debt credit card is there and you're paying on it every month because anytime you want to, like if you're in a situation, really large retailer, for instance, I won't mention names, but they're pretty much like, we will never be in Amazon because they are our competitor. They made their entire team move all of their stuff from AWS into Google and then there's others where they move everything into Azure, because now we're in this, you're dealing with all these competitive things that developers, I don't care, but no, the boss says you have to care now. So then you have to pay down that debt once you go in there. This is where it's getting really tricky. And this happened this year. I think this is really the big year where it happened.
No, I mean, honestly, I'm totally deferring because Patrick just kind of said it all there. I know from my personal standpoint, right, working with many cloud vendors over the years, and now looking at the multi-cloud thing, I think it makes a lot of sense, honestly, because I've seen time and time again where individual businesses will essentially get locked into a particular vendor, right? And it's been in the past, it's been difficult sometimes to ensure that whatever solution you have is distributed amongst multiple vendors, so you really don't get that. And what happens, if something catastrophic happens to a particular one, you need to flip over to another one. You don't like the pricing model, something like that. So I think it just kind of fits that we're finally now getting into this multi-cloud world. I'm just happy to see it, honestly.
Do you have any takes on this? You were at Amazon too. You get to hear from a lot of users, developers.
Right. Yeah, one of the things that was interesting about the conversations that we were hearing and people having sort of these vaguely worded concerns or I don't know how to, not fully articulated concerns about lock-in and what is this concept of lock-in. And you always want to, when you hear people start talking like that, you want to push a little bit deeper and say, what is it that you're afraid of locking into? Because I've heard fears in the past from some of our customers or potential customers at DataStax, like, oh, I don't know if I want to lock in to your platform. And we're also hearing about, well, I don't know if I want to lock into one of these cloud vendors in terms of using their data storage tier. My feeling is, you have to commit to something.
Well, and man, that is where this is like the earlier prediction or the earlier trend.
Yeah.
Kubernetes and containers are yet another trend that proves the point, which is if I'm in containers and I'm using Kubernetes, then I have a portable solution at this point. I can run that in any cloud, and I see that as that's the subtext here, is that if I have built an application stack that I've deployed on my personal laptop or in a cloud provider or on-prem, and it's running in containers, the full stack is in containers and Kubernetes is doing the orchestration, then I've just avoided a lock-in strategy there for sure. Now I'm not having to rebuild everything for an Azure instance versus an EC2 instance. It's just a container,
right? And
I could take it around with me.
Well, so I think that's kind of my point here, is that though you're always dealing with lock-in. You're writing a service. You choose a programming language. Well, that's a form of lock-in, right? So you're making some commitment to something at some point. And what we've always advised, or at least good architects have advised, to developers and to teams, is to use appropriate abstraction. I don't mean get out of control with abstraction layers, but do things to protect yourself. So, the containerization technology, that's a perfect example. Now I have that portability and I've done something to abstract myself from underlying hardware and I've protected myself. So make those kind of choices where you have an appropriate level of isolation from your technology choices, and you'll be fine. Then you can commit to something.
Something, yeah. And the data layers is the critical part. And the funny part to me is that no one has ever come out with a database that has the same semantics as Cassandra. It just does multi-master, active, like no other database. Like no one else has done that. And
so what about some of these features that we hear our cloud friends providing, like global tables in AWS and these sorts of things?
All of it has fine print, and it's just good enough. So the global tables is copy on write. There's no consistency guarantees, and if you run multi-master on that, you're going to fail miserably. There's no other way around it. I guarantee you, no one at Amazon, none of the solution architects are going to advocate an active situation with that feature. It doesn't work, and you'll fail. Most of even Spanner has a lot of fine print that you will fail at. There's no free lunch, and as we used to hear from Dwi all the time, there is no magic.
There is no magic.
There is no magic, and they're going to try to sell you on the hype, And it always goes down to the computer science. Always. And Cassandra was built originally to replicate. That was its core, is replication. And then data model on top of that replication scheme. That's what you want to use, that technology.
Nice. Well, I mean, I like that as a final word.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, it still plays out. I mean, you see what they all say is, well, Cassandra, they'll say that word because they know that that's the reality, is that's a real competitor to any cloud database, because it's the only database that will let you run in another cloud. That's kind of cool. That's cool. Freedom. Yeah, right on. Remember they played that and everyone's like, ooh.
Awkward.
Oh man, I'm throwing some shade. Okay. Well, I think that's plenty. I've libeled myself plenty at this point. So I think this will wrap up our wrap up of the wrap up. Are you wrapped up?
All wrapped up.
For 2017 out, right? All right. Thanks guys, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us again for the Distributed Data Show. We love your feedback, so go to the Distributed Data Show page on DataStax Academy and tell us what you think. You can also find us on the DataStax Academy YouTube channel, or find our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get great podcasts. While you're there, make sure and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.